So there's a number of different pieces of evidence we can use for climate change. If we look at more recent evidence, we can use things like meteorological data. So this is the weather data. It's for about 100 years old, or that's when our record started, and it's really accurate because we were specifically trying to measure the climate. If we want to go back a little bit further, we can use historical records. So we can look at old paintings and things that we read in books that might casually talk about the climate or show images of what the climate was like. A good example of this is the Thames freezing over back about 300 years ago, showing that it was a colder period. This is less reliable because it wasn't designed as a climate record. Looking a little bit further back, we can use tree rings, so anything almost from present to about 200 or 300 years, and we can look at the thickness of the tree rings. Trees grow a different ring every year. On years where it is warmer and wetter, the tree rings are wider. So it's not as precise, not as accurate, because it doesn't tell us an actual temperature, but it's quite reliable in that we know whether it was wetter and warmer or colder and drier. So that can help us to tell us about the climate. Going further back, we can use pollen analysis. So we find pollen that we find in the ground. We can look at that and we can see what conditions plants would live in at the moment. So if we find pollen from a plant that lives where it's over 30 degrees and it needs loads of rain, we can look at how the climate must have been in that location at that time. We can date that fairly accurate, so that's quite accurate and reliable. Going back further still, we can think about, and we're talking maybe now tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of years, we can look at fossil records, just like we look at pollen. We look for the animals, we see what conditions they live in now, or as similar as we can, and we can extrapolate or work out what climate would have been like there. We can also look at the rocks. So for example, around here, we've got lots of limestone. Limestone forms where it's much warmer under shallow, warm seas, tropical kind of environment. So we could suggest that the climate here used to be on a tropical nature. We can also use ice core data, so we can look at the ice core. We can see the thickness of the ice each year, and that gives us an indication of how much snow there was that year and how cold it was. We can also do some actual physical dating of that to get the exact age, and then we can look at oxygen isotopes and the amount of carbon dioxide in it to work out as close as possible what the climate is. So those are a range of different pieces of evidence we can use to work out what past climates were like.